Good day. Welcome to PFM on the Couch at AFROSAI-E. I am Edmund Shoko. AFROSAI-E is a member-based institution with 26 auditors general from English-speaking African countries making up our governing board. At AFROSAI-E, we commit to cooperate and support our 26-member Supreme Audit Institutions. This is to enhance their institutional capacity to successfully fulfill their audit mandate, thereby making a difference to the lives of the citizens in their countries. Now, towards empowering these Supreme Audit Institutions for a greater audit impact and quality, AFROSAI-E and the GIZ Good Financial Governance Africa program, we have developed the Public Financial Reporting Framework. This is a rigorous diagnostic Excel-based tool that contains more than 400 audit procedures, all designed to interrogate the entire public financial management cycle system of a country. The tool is custom-made and designed for the use by Supreme Audit Institutions, auditors who are used to financial, compliance, and performance audit. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has stretched and pushed our limits of imagination with regards to capacity building of our Supreme Audit Institutions. Now, for this better audit impact and quality, the PFM Couch at AFROSAI-E series aims to build Supreme Audit Institutions capacity building through the online learning platform. In this series, we shall be discussing all emerging and key public financial management matters that improve the quality and impact of Supreme Audit Institution audits. What is the Public Financial Reporting Framework? What does it do? And to date, what is the operational state of the AFROSAI-E region of Supreme Audit Institution? This is a region which has unanimously adopted to use the PFM reporting framework. And to answer these questions, join me in discussion with Bernard Wenzel, the Executive Officer at AFROSAI-E. Bernard Wenzel, how do you do?
Good morning, Ed. Well, thanks, and yourself.
Excellent. Bernard, welcome to the PFM on the Couch at AFROSAI-E. Bernard, you have been one of the people who's always working, in the background as far as AFROSAI-E activities are concerned, whether it's the governing board or whether it's technical update. But today we just want to put you on the forefront and ask you a couple of questions with regards to the public financial management reporting framework. I hope you're comfortable for that.
I'm ready, Ed. Thanks.
Excellent. Like I've already mentioned, you're one of the pioneering developers of the PFM RF at AFROSAI-E. How useful do you believe this tool is in improving the value and benefits of SAIs to the citizens of their own countries?
Yeah, thanks, Ed. I think you started using words like value and benefits and the citizens of countries, and I think we need to go back into history a little bit as well and see where the PFM reporting framework originated from. There are definitely links in the history as to where some of these principles that we've got in the PFM reporting framework originated from, as I've mentioned. And I want to take us back to about 2013 when ESI 12, as it was called back then, the value and benefits of SAIs were endorsed. It was later on changed to ESI P12, as you all know.
Mm-hmm.
And ESI 12 or ESI P12 is built on three pillars. The first one is to strengthen accountability, transparency and integrity in government. The second pillar talks about the SAI's responsibilities to demonstrate ongoing relevance to citizens, to parliaments and the other stakeholders. And then the third pillar talks about the responsibilities of SAIs to become model organizations and lead by example in their own conduct. Now within these pillars or broad areas as I was talking about, each one of them contains certain principles. And I think it's important for us to also just remember what the purpose of those principles were.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we look at the first pillar, for example, on strengthening transparency and accountability, and integrity in government. They are in essence the pillars that talk or the principles that talk about the responsibility of the audit office to carry out audits. And we all know that we need to audit and we need to report. That reporting should be done in a manner that allow for the public and your parliamentary oversight committees and bodies to hold government to account. And that's part of one of the principles as well. And then the third pillar that or principle that I want to mention about is to enable those charged with governance to take appropriate corrective action. So within this first pillar, there's actually, like I've said, there are these three principles. We need to audit, we need to report on the results to hold people accountable, and there should be corrective action. When we look at the second pillar of ESIP 12, we were talking about the ongoing relevance to citizens, to Parliament, and to other stakeholders. Now, that demonstration role that we've got as Supreme Audit Institutions relates to how do we respond to emerging risks and changing environments. Are we geared as audit officers to do that? How do we communicate with our stakeholders? I think that's also a crucial part. And then also for us to be a credible source of information that can provide information to the public at large to make certain changes. So just within these two pillars or this first two components of ESIP 12, we talk about the auditing responsibilities. We're talking about us becoming organizations that can proactively respond to changes in environments. Now that took us back to 2013. In 2016 at INTOSAI, one of the theme papers was on the Sustainable Development Goals, and the question was posed to INTOSAI: how can we as INTOSAI contribute to the 2030 agenda for Sustainable Development Goals? And the theme paper, in essence, was designed about around 4 areas or approaches at the end. Now, the first one was for audit officers to assess the preparedness of national governments, to implement, to monitor, and to report on the SDGs. And I think you can just imagine on a government level the challenge it is in terms of taking the SDGs that everybody in the world has signed up to and break that down into smaller, manageable chunks on country level.
Yes.
So that's more on a process perspective in terms of what can audit officers do to audit that assessment process and add value in that regard. The second approach dealt with the ability of audit officers to conduct performance audits on the SDGs. And I think the paper was also designed among the principle almost that not all audit officers is on the same level, and not all countries are on the same level.
That's true. That's true.
There are more developed countries and there are more developed audit officers. So those that can do it, and where systems and processes are working in government on the SDGs in terms of the monitoring and the reporting, then rather focus and do performance audits. So I think that was the second approach that was quite crucial. And then the third approach was in terms of the SDG 16 in terms of the governance arrangements and the responsibilities also for SAIs to look at public financial management systems in a broader sense of than just what we historically used to do. I think historically we, as audit officers, we audited and reported and we moved away. So typically what we call the regularity audits. Nowadays we talk about financial and compliance audits. So, and I think also part of that was for us to develop that common understanding of what the PFM reporting area or environment looks like at government and at country level. So that was basically the third approach. And then the fourth issue of this theme paper at INTOSAI that was discussed and approved was again for audit officers to become model organizations in terms of transparency, reporting on their own performance, etc. I'm not going to talk a lot about that, but I think just a brief reminder that when we talk about this, audit officers needs to be audited independently. they must also report on their own activities and outcomes of their activities to governments in a transparent and an open manner. And I think that's where and how we can become models of transparency. So in essence, just short, this is where it sort of came from initially. 2013 gave us the initial guidance in terms of ECIP 12. INTOSAI 2016 then said we need to come up with models and processes in terms of audit officers and how they can look at public financial management, especially in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. So in 2017, at our governing board meeting in Kenya, in Nairobi, we've asked this question and we've discussed it with the audit officers and the auditors generals. And part of that conclusion was that there's not a holistic framework against which an audit office can audit and report when it comes to public financial management. Often the information is scattered, it's not in a coherent manner. It does not allow for, on a country level, to look at the challenges that needs to be fixed to address PFM weaknesses. There's also not a coherent system in terms of how can we engage with your client, your auditees, on the root causes. What's really going on from a government perspective on that? And then also importantly, how do we compare results perhaps over a period of time and also among other countries? So that was in 2017 in May. So we ended up setting up a think tank with the support of GIZ, and I mean GIZ has been working with us on this project ever since.
Yeah, for a while.
There was probably about 4 or 5 countries that formed part of the initial research and think tank, and it also included other networks in Africa. We collaborated with the Collaborative African Budget Reform Initiative, CABRI. ATAF, the African Tax Association Forum, was also there at the initial research workshops. And so we started throwing ideas around, and we said, but how do we take SDGs? How do we break it down into manageable chunks, and that we can look at the public financial management from a more holistic and broad perspective? We've realized that as part of that, I think like I've started to mention, is that a lot of information was scattered. So we tried to come up with the main issues that we want to focus on. And that was, how does your national budget, for example, how does that tie back to your Sustainable Development Goals? Is there a interaction between your parliament when it comes to the allocation of budgets versus information that you get from your treasuries, information that you get from your revenue authorities, and also from your statistician officers? So in essence, what is that link then between the available money and the PFM frameworks versus what eventually goes to the to your ministries and your departments and public entities, etc. We also realize that we need to look at the sustainability of the public sector, especially also those, let's call it non-government sector entities, which is under the control of government, or public entities in many cases. What's then the link between all of this as well as the PFM? We've also plotted and said, but within all of this, within the information that's available within the sustainability of that, what is the human resources that is available? Is there adequate human resources available on government level to be able to complete all of this information and prepare the necessary information? And to what extent are those human resources professionally qualified, and especially in terms of financial management? We've also realized that as part of your PFM framework, there should be a link with the compliance to international accounting standards and the level thereto. So obviously when we talk about the system, we talk about the HR capacity to do all of that. Does that result into information that is comparable across countries, but adheres to an accounting framework which is internationally recognized and customized for your country level. And then underpinning all of this, obviously, is what we call, what is needed is your IT systems. So you need planning, you need people, you need your compliance to accounting standards, but you also need your IT systems to support all of this. So yeah, I think this is sort of where the PFM reporting framework came from. It was, like I said, 2013, then 2016 with INTOSAI, 2017 at our governing board meeting, and I presume you will go into more detail on what the PFM reporting framework looks like and what it all entails. Yeah.
Absolutely, but maybe not today. But look, Weinert, your grasp of the historical context in this development area is impeccable. It's admirable. It's almost intimidating. However, the PFM on the couch is a very hot seat. So no amount of talking is going to let Weinert off the hook. I'm continuing, and I will continue to throw punches at him until he answers all the questions that we want in order for us to ensure that we understand what this PFM RF2 is all about. So Weinert, you're still on the couch, and I want you to look back now, introspect, into AFROSAI-E. AFROSAI-E has been producing the State of a Region report consistently for almost over 10 years now. Now, what is the State of the Region report? What is its purpose? And what is the process involved in producing such a report, since it's so intertwined with the development of size and public financial management reporting development?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Edmund. I think you were talking about the State of the Region report, and most people out there will perhaps be more aware of the what we call the Institutional Capacity Building Framework, the ICBF, and over years we've started changing the reporting on that to be called the State of the Region report. So the ICBF is in essence a framework that was developed, and it's actually probably about 2005 already, when AFROSAI-E was formally launched, and because at that stage the Auditors Generals asked themselves, how are they going to monitor themselves and their audit officers in terms of a development process to really understand whether they're making progress or not. They came together as I think at that stage it was 20 or 22 countries. We're currently 26 member countries. So the issue was, we're now working together as audit officers in terms of capacity building, but how do we know if we're making progress or not? So out of that, then the ICBF was born, and people can access it via our website. Like you've said, it's called the State of the Region report. Now, the ICBF is built on 5 domains, as we call them. The first one is looking at the independence and the legal framework. So that in essence is talking about what is the mandate of the audit office to conduct audits, what is the roles and responsibilities of the head of the institution, the Auditor General, his or her appointment processes to make sure that there's independence in terms of the office. There's a lot of focus also on the financial and administrative autonomy and independence of the audit officers that's built into this specific domain. In other words, can you as an audit office, for example, appoint your own staff on your own conditions that, yes, it should be aligned to what is in the broader public sector, but I think let's also make sure that there's sufficient professionally qualified people that's working in the audit office. So that's the first pillar.
Okay.
Or the first domain rather. The second domain is what we call organization and management. Now that domain is in essence looking at the holistic planning of the audit office. It looks at how the strategic plan is being developed, broken down into operational plans. How does the audit office annually prepare for the audits, all those kind of things. So that's your organizational structure to support your legislative mandate. The third domain is focusing on the human resources side. And I think you will notice that similar to what we've discussed on the PFM reporting framework, HR and human people remain a very important pillar on this.
Indeed.
Now we've only appointed a human resource expert in 2016, so it was quite a number of years after the ICBF started that the first real HR manager or person was appointed.
We're talking about Mariana here, right?
That's correct, yeah. So
Excellent.
everybody will know Mariana. And since then, she did a lot of good work in terms of breaking down your employee life cycle into manageable chunks. Again, focusing what is the office HR policy in terms of recruitment. How do you take people as a part of onboarding whenever you start working in the office? What's the process for performance management? What's the process for career development? What is the exit strategy, and what is the, what happens when an employee leaves? So the third domain on HR focuses in essence on the employee life cycle. The fourth domain, which is on audit standards and methodology, and that's perhaps the one that initially received most attention. I think in the early years, it was more on perhaps audit standards. How do we make sure that we as audit officers comply with audit standards and train people to do audits? I think there was also at that stage a lot of emphasis on independence and legal frameworks. So perhaps those were the two domains that received more attention initially. On the audit standards and methodology, again, it's for us important to make sure that your audit officers comply with internationally accepted audit standards or approved standards, and in our case, it's the ESAIs. And then the fifth domain on the ICBF is on communication and stakeholder management. And similarly to the HR, it was only in the later years that we've appointed communication managers. I think the first one was in 2014. So it's not that long ago. It feels long, but it's not that long ago. So in essence, then the ICBF look at the whole organizational structure from the Supreme Audit Institution, and it's in essence there to support them to come up with their own developmental needs, and then identify areas what they need to focus on. So within these the framework then, and within the domains, we've got different scoring levels. So you can then assess yourself against the maturity model, where you can, in essence, mark your own homework. So if you've got systems and processes in place, then you will score a level 3. If you do not have that in place, then it's a level 2 and a level 1 in certain instances. I think what we've seen over the years is that the ICBF allows for monitoring on SAI level. Now, the SAIs that are using the ICBF frequently and as part of an ongoing tool, I think they are getting better results in terms of understanding what their own development needs are, and what should be done to improve that or address that. So what we've also been doing in this year's State of the Region report, or the one for 2020, was to break it down into even more manageable chunks, so that within the different domains you can then see, okay, but I need to focus on the policy side of the HR, or I need to focus more on the reporting side or the monitoring side of the HR. I think that is all definitely helping also in terms of that analysis. The ICBF we also use as a regional comparison tool. Like I've mentioned, it's been completed annually since 2005 at least. So our governing board discussed that through their capacity building committee, and they then also use that to come up with research areas for us to focus on, and specific areas to support them in. We've also now used the ICBF as our theory of change for the 2021 to 2026 strategic plan. And I think the theory of change for the people out there is in essence a question that we are being asked by our donors and development partners is, what do we do with the money that they give us and the support that they give us? So if they give us support and money, we translate that into products and deliverables and activities. The final outcome that we're working towards is the improvement in the capacity of the audit officers. So that's why we've linked it back to the ICBF, our theory of change. And then, as I've mentioned also, I think a few of our development partners also used it when they engage with the countries directly. So yeah, I think from a ICBF perspective, it's a tool that's been used fairly extensively over the last few years.
Wow, Venant, you speak so well about this ICBF tool or whatever creature it is. But I can't help but notice that I think you dug a hole for yourself and you're in it, and I really need you to get out of it. You said this ICBF is a self-assessment process. But how do you validate the information to ensure credibility? I mean, I'm listening to you, Venant, and you're saying you're using it for regional comparison. You're using it for so many things. I mean, if I'm asked myself, Ed, how do you look? I always look great. How do you manage? How do you manage that, man?
Yeah, sometimes we need to look in the mirror and be critical about the age, and all of that. That's a very good question. And again, over the last few years, what we've been doing quite extensively is to provide more rigorous training on the ICBF, making sure that all the countries fully understand, what is entailed in a specific question, because you need to understand within these 5 domains, we're talking about close to 200 questions, something like that. So each and every SAI must be able to interpret that question and then match it back to your maturity level. Like I said, you're level 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, initially, we did see a lot of, obviously, discrepancies in that. And that's what we try and eliminate through the training. We also do what we call triennial quality assurance reviews. So that's typically where we will go to an audit office, and we try and do that once every 3 years. And we send an independent team, and they look at the quality of the specific audit office. Now, what we've been doing for the probably 4 or 5 years now is to take selected questions from the quality assurance review and match that with the self-assessment scores to see if there's a correlation. So in other words, if we say, Ed, you do not comply to your audit standards, but you in your self-assessment said, you know what, I'm a learner level 4.
I'm great.
Exactly, so that's why we try and eliminate through this comparison of the QA results with the self-assessment information. Now, currently we sit on about the 70% correlation, but obviously we would like to get it as close to possible as 100%, because I think that's where the objectivity will come in. That's where there's definitely, that's where we can then comfortably stand up and say, you know what, we place a reliance on the self-assessment of the work that's being done by the audit officers. And I think in essence, we also need to make sure that, as audit officers, we are objective and fair as possible and measure ourselves as accurate as possible. What we started doing last year was also to prepare country ICBF reports.
All right.
So instead of just looking at it from a consolidated perspective, we now translate that information into a country perspective. We add our information and our perspectives on that. And then we can use that as an engagement with the Auditor General and his audit team. And then ultimately the expectation is for the SAI to come up with an action plan, and that action plan can then help them to progress and monitor and see where things are going wrong. So yeah, I mean, initially it was a self-assessment. Again, there's always this room for misinterpretation, but we try and address that through the training. Like I've said, through the quality assurance that we link with the self-assessment scores, I think we definitely see an improvement on that. And then hopefully through the country reports, we'll also be able to assist the site to come up with an action plan that is specific and relevant in terms of addressing the key components within these 5 domains that is applicable on the ICBF.
Wow, you speak of a 70% correlation. That's pretty high, to be honest. Although, of course, it's not what we want it to be. There's always room for improvement. But, I mean, you've been in this game for a while now. How has the figure changed? Has it been going up or is it going down as far as correlation is concerned?
I think it's been fairly static, actually. It's been marginally up and marginally down. And like I said, we've only been doing it for a short time, short number of years. And, like I've said, we also visit the country once every 3 years. So it does take time for us to get to 26 countries. So I think, like I've said, we also want to make sure that correlation is as close as possible to 100%. Now, even through the training, we did realize that, people were perhaps more critical of themselves at the SAI level when they scored themselves.
That's so.
So, I mean, we did see a reduction in the scores, those type of things. So, I think we're getting there. It's going to be a journey, but we'll get there in terms of getting the correlation as close as possible.
Well, look, Supreme Audit Institutions are beacons of transparency and accountability. I only see it going up further, and all the best on that one. But look, let's not let go of this thing of correlation. I think it's a very good topic to talk about. Now, and I also want to go personal on you now. I'm not going to ask about what you had for breakfast, but what I will ask is, do you think there's a correlation between the PFMRF and the ICBF? And what are some of the lessons learned from ICBF that can be applied on the PFMRF going forward?
Yeah. Well, that's also, it's an interesting question. And again, when we started working on the PFM Reporting Framework in 2017, like I said, it was initially a think tank, and we started throwing ideas around and trying to come up with information that is meaningful. It was never really intended to have a similar approach in terms of maturity model or levels, which has eventually ended up in the PFM Reporting Framework. So in the end, I think we did mirror the PFM Reporting Framework to some extent on the thinking of the ICBF.
Yes.
What we've realized, and you were asking about the lessons learned, I think the challenge with the PFM Reporting Framework is that if it's not legislatively required for the site to report on holistically
a particular
on the PFM,
matter. Yes.
it's not being done. And I think that's a challenge, is how do we institutionalize this, that the PFM work that the audit office are doing is being done annually. Like I've said, for the ICBF, we've been doing it annually since 2005. And again, that makes it a living tool and a living monster almost. If you don't start addressing it and fixing stuff, nothing is going to happen. And that's the same with the PFM Reporting Framework. The challenge is that how do we get the audit officers to use the PFM Reporting Framework, again, consistently every year. We've designed it in such a way that it does involve additional audit work. But I think a lot of that will also be institutionalized in terms of the knowledge and understanding of the client, of the auditee.
Absolutely.
So in essence, it's not affecting the audit scope as drastic as what many people would see, will think it should. It does,
Okay.
I think if we can get SAIs to do that on an annual basis, it will allow parliaments and governments to understand what are the real underlying challenges, what needs to be fixed. Otherwise, if it's a dipstick, you do it this year, but you cannot, when you come back in 3-4 years, then later on, then it's sometimes difficult to see what changed, what did not change, and what were the reasons for
Gets
for
a bit
changing.
foggy.
Yeah.
Gets a bit foggy.
We've also then, and you're going to go into the detail, but the PFM framework is built on also on five focus areas. The first one is your overall policy framework on government level.
True.
And then it goes into your budget preparation, and this is where I've mentioned earlier about the relationships with other entities like your revenue authorities, like the stats departments.
Yes.
Universities, perhaps civil society organizations, in terms of collating information that can be incorporated as part of your budget processes. The third PFM process that's been analyzed is the budget approval process. What's the processes that goes through to make sure that your budget is approved along the specific guidelines and that. Then the fourth area talks about the financial and service delivery aspect. So that's where, now I've got the money, I'm the Ministry of Health or Education, what am I doing with that money?
Yes.
Do I deliver? Do I provide a service? How do I manage that money? And then the last PFM area that we focused on in the tool is on the accounting and reporting and oversight issue. Again, how do I report back to Parliament? Do I comply with the accounting standards, for example?
Yes.
So I think there's similarities in the PFM and ICBF where now suddenly you can start comparing data over time. Also within the PFM, you can compare ministries or groups of clusters.
Yes.
You can compare your policy setting areas, and it's perhaps your treasury and your parliament. You can look at what policies are being set versus the implementation of those policies by your ministry, so you can then try and analyze where are things going wrong.
Brilliant.
You can also look at it from a root cause perspective, in terms of, again, what are the weaknesses that needs to be fixed? Is it the absence of a policy? Is it the lack of human resources to execute that policy? Again, do you have qualified or people that's trained in those policy implementations, and do they know what to do? Or is there a lack of human resources and people, and people cannot get to the essence of the work? It could also be on the PFM where there's weaknesses in the information systems. So you've got wonderful policies, you've got wonderful people that do the work, but your IT systems do not allow for that. Or there could be governance and oversight problems, or there could be communication problems. So I think there's definitely similarities between the two tools. Like I've said, it was never probably intended to be like that, but in essence, looking back, I think the ICBF thinking really helped us to take forward the PFM reporting framework thinking.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you so much, Wynand. I mean, you have really expounded well on this topic of the PFM reporting framework, how it fits into the structures of AFROSAI-E, and how it even fits in globally to the matters that INTOSAI is trying to push as far as Supreme Audit Institutions are concerned. I certainly would like to thank you for the time that you spent with us. It's a hot seat. I know that. And your time is very precious. And for that, for everyone who always visits us and gives their time like you did, we always want to present them with this PFM RF cushion. This is just a standing reminder for you when you get at home of all the other things that you have survived in. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. This is wonderful. This is wonderful. I wasn't expecting a gift today. I'll have to declare this one.
You have to declare that one.
Yeah.
Both home and
all the best for the rest of your sessions. I do believe that it's a hot seat, but let's be honest. I think that PFM is a tool that can be used. Definitely, if we can use the information even on a continental level, we can have such meaningful information that we can discuss with other entities in the continent. And then also like I've said, it should be institutionalized. It should not be only a once-off thing, and that's a challenge. But thanks a lot, Ed.
Absolutely. No, pleasure, always. Thank you so much for staying with us for the past half an hour or so whilst I was in discussion with Wynand. Now, if you want a recap on the PFM RF tools, just click the video link in the description below, and you can access as much as you want. Now, your opinions and views on how we can improve this series are valuable. So please, take time to go to our website, and on our website, give us your feedback, including all of your PFM emerging topics. Topics which you believe, if we discuss them on this platform, they're going to assist auditors in Supreme Audit Institutions to better perform and make audits of great impact and quality going forward. Now, until we meet again, my name is Edmund Shoko, and this is the PFM Couch at AFROSAI-E.